Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's banned
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
All right. Well, we made it, everybody. It's the WandaVision episode. We're just gonna talk WandaVision all episode. I don't. What do you want to do? I feel like we need to address the
Elephant in the room.
which is
So to
how it
speak.
was released, how people felt
Yes.
about the ending. I don't want to talk too much about the ending in particular, but I want to talk about how it was released and why I feel like that has inadvertently dominated the conversation about the show. And then we can get into like what I think about the show, because I've seen two takes now.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, like there's the people that are like, this is the fans' fault, and then there's the people that are like, this is the writers' fault for not writers, but like this is the production team's fault for not managing expectations. And I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, for one, a place like New Rockstar's saying this is the production's fault. I'm like, I mean, you guys multiple times a day posting hour-long videos about theories and where this is going. I don't think it's quite the production's fault, but like,
I agree.
My thing is, it's the week-to-week thing. I said it from the beginning, and I will die on that hill. Certain shows aren't meant to be released week to week. This was quite like, it was such a specific story being told, and I'm happy with what we got, but I understand that they chose to be like, let's have a week in between things, and we'll tell people that it's so that we can get the conversation. But like, when you do certain things, and we'll get into it when we actually talk about the show, like you're inviting a lot of speculation.
Yes.
But since that's not where you were going with it, why not just tell the story all at once? AKA put it all out in the week. That way people will actually judge you on the story you told and not what they built up in their head in the weeks in between things.
Right. I think what we have here is very clearly a business decision that's been PR'd into through interviews and all those kind of things, and through editing, even where it's become such a successful business model, which we love, that it's clearly to make sure people do not have the 1 month free kind of thing, and they're paying for the end of the finales, and they're paying for, which 100% business wise makes sense, and okay, I can accept that. But from the PR side, justifying it from how they're like, this is one movie even told, and like, this is where the interviews kind of there's obviously different things said about this, right? Different this is supposed to be episodic, and then there's interviews where it's been like, oh, this is supposed to be one movie told over a whole thing. It's a business move to make sure the subscriptions are done, as well as generate more marketing through that speculation and discussion between episodes, which is brilliant.
It worked
but
in
it
that
is
sense.
100
people talking about
yes
it.
Correct. It's even on Fallon. It's on like major media. So yes, it was very successful in that regard. So all eyes were on WandaVision. So whether or not it lived up to the expectations that I guess the reaction media like ourselves have put into it, but I guess we haven't, because we didn't do week to week. But
that was another thing I wanted to say. Like,
yeah,
we probably should have done week to week, but I'm glad we didn't. Like, ultimately, I'm glad we didn't, because like, this is supposed to be seen pretty, like, even if you took breaks, it is one story. It isn't a bunch of stories. This is what I talked about. Like, and I'm not using Game of Thrones as an example of the perfect show, but what I'm saying is that worked week to week because you had these mini arcs of like a bunch of stuff happening in different places, different people's stories. So you have the opportunity to make what is a serialized show feel a bit more episodic because you're like, okay, we're dealing with Bran right now, or hey, well, let's deal with Rob. And like even that idea of like, let's build up to the Battle of the Bastards or Clegane Bowl, like all that kind of stuff. You can have these mini arcs and that makes sense week to week. And then that makes sense for the story, or even having people having water cooler moments because they're talking about the actual show. They're not talking about like, hey, like this is how mutants come into the universe, or this is how we meet the Fantastic Four. They're just like, oh, what's going to happen to the characters we're actually dealing with in this show?
And that has been raised multiple times successfully through conversations, not obviously off mic conversations, through text and all that kind of stuff. And yes, it's something I ultimately do agree with. The speculative efforts for more, I don't know if it comes down to like it's clever editing or clever writing to really write with the intent of deceiving the audience, but congratulations. I mean, well done week to week in the sense where pulling off the Ralph character as well as pulling off a lot of different kind of sleight and hand things in a show about magic is quite good, I think. Which
and I feel like
that that experience for
sure.
I
feel like that would be good if you saw that all at once.
Yes,
and you're like, oh, that's a really cool thing they did. Like, yeah, but they didn't give themselves that opportunity because of like basically the three leads, Tiana Paris, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, having these interviews, which I feel like Elizabeth Olsen gets a bit of flack because everyone's like, she said there was a Luke Skywalker sized cameo, which all she said, her quote was like, yeah, there was a casting that I'm surprised more people aren't talking about, but she never said it was like, she didn't say the words. It's the same as Luke Skywalker and Mandalorian. She was just like, well, there's a casting that I'm excited about that people aren't talking about yet. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And that's obviously Evan Peters. Like that was that. And then, yeah, Paul Bettany doing his joke. But again, these are people that are like, that could have been the 100th interview they did for the day. It might be loopy. They're saying whatever, but then it's strategically placed in between episodes of like, like, well, what do you think this is going to be? And it's like, well, like, I don't know. And yeah, the Tiana Paris, like, can't wait for you to see who's on the other side. I'm like, that's a great soundbite for a news outlet to have and like get traffic, but like that's not what the point of the show was. So yeah, I just feel like that's not what the show was about, and it was a bit. I think everyone contributed to it. Like there's the media that obviously needs clicks. There is the. So yeah, there's media news like places like Fallon that are like, hey, like let's talk about the hot new thing. There are places like New Rock Stars, and I hate to pick on them. Like I enjoy their content for the most part. But yeah, like and they're also very transparent about what they're doing. Like, yeah, I like Eric Voss in particular, like I speculate, that's what I do, that's what you're coming here for. But you are adding to it, becomes part of the discourse.
Yeah, they're fanning the fire, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't think he's trying to be mean about it or anything. It's just yeah, you are a voice that's heard now, and you're adding to it. And then because I don't blame the writers or the production. They made the show they needed to make, and then higher ups made a decision about how that was going to be disseminated.
I feel like what's happened here is basically what I've thought long and hard about this, because what happened is I watched all the episodes in a row prior to the release, hoping that midnight it would come on live and I would just watch it straight. That would be great, but I had to sleep on it and then go to the next thing. The feeling I had was when it's a movie release, the great thing about it is the content creators that fan the fire are forced to time gate their content in a way where it's like, okay, here's this theory, and then a week later, here's this theory of the week, and here's this theory of the week, and all that kind of stuff, which is great because it like really peters out everything, but it really allows us to react to the movie and the media that we just saw. In this one, because we're like, oh, the story is incomplete, we're all trying to puzzle piece and put together a story. And try to be the first ones that are like, ha, I got the theory right. But it ends up being this over like mini atom bombs throughout the week. And it's just like a lot of our expectations get really, really escalated because of that. So I think it's just like the mini version and like the inability to distribute over a longer period of time that made this a bigger fire than what it was.
So this is why I brought up Game of Thrones. How I feel. This is why I brought up, or like something like Breaking Bad. I feel like people are a little happier with the way that ended. I know people that are a bit upset about how that ended, but that was more of a last episode thing and less of a last season's episode thing. I think those shows, even with the speculation, it was like, hey, do you see that crease in his shirt? That must mean he's like an informant, like that in terms of Breaking Bad. This was like no one. I shouldn't say no one. The main thing was people trying to figure out how new characters were going to be introduced into this world. It didn't feel like the conversation was about the story that was being told. And we talked about this off mic as well. There was a thing where because it's Marvel and everyone knows everything counts and everything can pay off later, that no one was actually talking about this specific story. I keep saying no one. That's not true. The spotlight was on what's going to be introduced into the world, not even into the show, but just like, hey, she's gonna do this, and that's how we get mutants. And like something like Monica Rambeau going into the thing, that's how we get mutants. It's gonna be through the hex, and it's like that's not stupid. What the show is about.
Yeah.
It isn't speculation on what's happening in the show. It's just speculation on Marvel's universe. And you could do that with anything. It didn't seem like the main discourse was about what is happening in the show, what is being processed, what is happening to the characters that you ostensibly would be invested in. And that's why I found it different, because yes, there's nothing wrong with speculating. There's nothing like, and if that's how you enjoy it, that's how you enjoy it. But I feel like what I found with this show, because it is Marvel, is that we weren't even speculating the way other people speculate about other shows.
So one of the things I want to bring up too is that I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now, and under genre it says drama, mystery, romance sitcom. So the idea of mystery, I don't think was an element intended written into the show. It was reactionary element that like the fan base projected on, for sure. So I don't think it's mystery. The idea of like, Agatha trying to figure out how she did it so she can become more powerful. I'm like, that's not really mystery.
No, the mystery is just what is happening here.
Correct.
It's for the audience. It is a mystery. Like there are mystery elements in it. There is even down to the investigation started by the FBI and being conducted by SWORD. All of that is mystery stuff. It's just, I mean, it's weird that they left out horror. Like I found like this last episode was pretty scary, and like they had scary like when she goes back to the witches, I'm like, oh, like if I were younger, this would genuinely scare me. Like this feels like an earnest attempt at scaring people.
I feel like a lot of what they're alluding to is like, wait, we got more up our sleeves, so to speak. So I mean, and we'll obviously talk about that when we get to our speculation of where this goes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's the show, whether or not succeeds on its own or like all this kind of stuff, we have to talk about now, because the counterculture or the response reaction culture or whatever it was to this definitely made it something bigger than what it is. Or did it? I guess that's what we're here to find out. So
I wanted to address it. I think that it was a mistake to release it week to week. I think, and that's even if people were never going to talk about it, because of what property it is, that week to
Mhm.
week sets you up for failure.
Yep.
No matter what, like every time I heard someone be like, this, just be patient. That's what TV used to be. I'm like, but this isn't normal TV.
No.
This is a movie they split up into 9 segments.
Yes.
And
It's not
and when we talk about the show, I will talk about the 2 moments where I felt like, oh, that deserves a break. This deserves an act break or whatever. Maybe this was a 3-episode miniseries, maybe, but like having 8 weeks with this, that set them up for failure.
It was rough.
But then
I would agree with that.
I would add all of the stuff that was done with the way they released the information about the interviews, again with those 3 leads, what they said, all distractions. And I understand why it was done. It put eyes on the show. I think that's unfortunate. I think that was a bit of a cynical way of going about getting hype for this show.
Yeah, it got hype, but at the same time, it almost like drew attention away from itself in a way. You know what I mean?
Because if you're worried about, like, if you're going into the 9th episode and everyone's like, what's the big cameo? It's like, but is like, that's what you care about after this much time with these characters? Like, who's the big cameo? And I'm not talking about you in particular, but like, that's what the headlines were, like all the reaction videos, all of it was like, who's the cameo? Like, what's, like, how does Mephisto like work into this? And it's like, that's not like, anyway. So that's, I just wanted to address that. I think
the way I saw it was like, because the thing is, I had fun doing it, so I'm like, it's a fun part of it. But you're right, it did distract away from me actually talking about the show and reviewing the show. But like, it's not normal television in the sense where, to me, because of the way they cut these shows, and where the episodes air quotes were, that it was like, oh, okay, so I'm just basically not going to be satisfied each and every week. To me, it was like, oh, I'm gonna have soup all the time and never be full, really, because it's soup. That's what it felt like.
Everything was an appetizer. It didn't feel accumulative until a certain point.
Correct.
I'd say the last like 3 episodes felt like actually accumulative, but like, I do think that, like, I said it from the first 3 that we got, or no, we only got the first 2, right? Yeah, we got the first 2. Critics got the first 3. Those first 2, I'm like, sure. There's people that were like, oh, that's cool, I used to watch those shows. And I'm like, but that's not where the show is gonna live. Basically, after the 4th episode, they pretty much abandoned that kind of attention to like, in terms of our generation's appreciation of it, I would say. Like, I think that, all that old stuff, that feels way more technical, because the more you get on, the more you're just like, oh yeah, well, that's that's just how they did things. And then, like, I think there was cool little details and nods to things, but it felt less artful. And I don't mean that as a bash, but I feel like I don't think people would feel it was as artful once you get to like Malcolm in the Middle, Modern Family. I feel like people kind of dismiss that as just like, I don't watch those shows. I don't know. I don't know what that is. So you couldn't live in that world of like, oh, it's just cool that they're recreating these sitcoms, because it was like, that's not what this show is about. And you know that as a Marvel fan, that's not what the show is about. And I'm also not saying that I didn't have I definitely had my speculation of like, oh, this is where this is all going. I was happy where it ended, but I definitely felt like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. I just was like, let me wait till the end though, because I don't feel the need to like assert this. Like, let me just see, like, and it was nice to be right about certain things, and it was nice to like a lot of things that work for Marvel, it was nice to be like, oh, that's how they did it. Okay, cool. I didn't expect that, but that was a nice way around that. Anyway, so let's talk about the actual show. Those first 2 episodes, I think that was a mistake to release just those 2. I think the first three need to be put together. That seems that seems like one episode, and I get it, you can edit it down or whatever, but like that seems like one satisfying story that then leaves you like, oh, what the hell? Like that's what's happening. There's people outside monitoring this. Okay, like that is how you do like an episode of TV and then be like, all right, like what's gonna happen next week? Because that's your pilot episode. You set up everything.
Yep.
And now people know what they are speculating about.
I agree.
As opposed to like speculating of like, oh, it's this comic book. Oh, it's this, and it's like just speculating on what it could be instead of what actually is happening.
Yeah, having rewatched it and seen basically the first 3 episodes and then needing to walk my dog, being like, wait a minute, that was a good natural point to actually edit it if they were going to stretch this out, because it was like this, like first 2 episodes together, you're stuck in black and white. You're like, yeah, there's a lot going on here. This is weird. I guess, the mystery part does succeed. You're right, it does. But it's just like, I just got a sampler for the show. It's like an hors d'oeuvre even. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, great. We can talk about this a lot, but now we feel like dummies because we know we need more information that we're going to get later. So the time gating of the content is really not well done in the first 2 episodes. But if they did first 3, wonderful. Would have loved that. Would have been great.
Yeah, I think that gives you a good sense of what's happening. You won't have many answers. And like for someone like me, where I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure Agnes is Agatha Harkness, I can appreciate what she's doing, and like the way she's moving her hands, and it just looks like it's her being a dramatic person from that time period. You're like, oh, she's like putting spells on things, like she's doing stuff, like she's looking at Vision to see what's going on. And when you have the context of the end of like, oh, she's trying to figure out what's going on, like that's really cool. Like that is a great performance. Like that is a great physical performance from Catherine Hahn of like what she is doing in those first couple of episodes. Some of it seems like red herring stuff.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Like that is part of a mystery anyway, to throw you off of some stuff. But I think the best part of those first 2 episodes in particular, because I did have an issue with on that third one where I'm like, well, why isn't she trying to be there when the kids are being born? Like she's very like awkwardly not visible until the end, where she's like, you can't trust I don't even remember what Monica's name was when she was in the Hex, but like, you can't trust her. And
Geraldine.
Geraldine, yeah.
Yep.
Like, yeah, you can't trust her. And I'm like, whatever, okay. Because again, even that wording, I'm like, why would she care? Like that's trying to make it seem like she's got some plan other than I want to steal Wanda's magic. Like that type of stuff. I'm like, I don't get what she's doing there. Like that's always doesn't really sit well for me, that she was like, oh, you can't trust her. It's like, but like that makes, I think that was done to make you think that this is her doing, when it isn't. She's not doing anything. She's just like, okay, cool, let me observe how she's doing all this magic.
See, I feel like that was one of those things where it's like, if I distract Wanda, manipulate Wanda, then she won't be paying attention to what I'm doing, which was pretty successful, I think. Like that's the way I interpreted it. I like with Catherine Hahn's character having doing the rewatch, was like, oh wow, you really just distracted and did the illusion thing even within the episode. And I was like, that was great.
I don't know what she was doing. Like you mean like the stork and stuff like that?
No, not the stork, but just like the subtle planting of like, question Geraldine. Like I can't control that she's here, but I know that she's not from this actual town, so we need to question her, kind of do the thing. Like,
she didn't say that to Wanda. She said that to Vision, and again, she doesn't care about anything but stealing Wanda's magic.
Yeah.
So then, what does that matter if?
But
Geraldine's
I think like
there?
Because in the beginning, like very, very early, knowing that, because her knowing that Vision as an Avenger is dead, knowing that history, and then being like, okay, something weird is going on here. It's magic. I can feel it. Well, I want it. Okay, but I still need to figure everything out. Like she's figuring out everything as much as we are, right? So the idea of like planting these seeds of like, don't trust her, like I can only trust myself, playing these mind games with everyone, I think was like really the strategies she had until she could figure out the magic part of things, which I really actually really appreciated. It was really, really cool because it showed like in that episode, even like the magic illusion show, which was hilarious. And then her like deceiving everyone, which was one of those really, really great payoff moments in the Agatha episode where they're like,
Mhm.
oh, they reveal it. I'm like, this is fantastic having that rewatch. But that's the thing is doing the full rewatch, you appreciate it so much more and you put those pieces together so much faster. The week to week, it just ends up killing it. So it's like, here's the momentum, stop.
Mhm.
I hate it. That
I
sucks.
agree. I think yeah, and then the fourth episode, that's good, right? That's the you find out how Monica got in there.
Yeah. I think I
think that's
like
good.
it.
You set up Hayward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You set up Hayward's sliminess,
Mhm.
and all those little hints of his sliminess. I think the really really good thing about, sorry, just really one final note about the episode 3 cut. The reason why I think it's really really good is because that episode, that scene alone, where you see someone's hands watching it and you find out it's Darcy, is you know that this is something that's actually happening, and it's not like, oh, Wanda's just dreaming. Because that would be the part where I'm like, oh, Wanda's just dreaming. That would suck. And then we're back to the regular world. So like that part, knowing we're watching, like that's a good satisfying mini arc conclusion. And then episode 4,
That
we're like,
happens at the
now
end of the first episode. The hands.
the hands.
Yeah.
Does it?
That's the first episode.
Oh god, yeah. Because I just kept like trying to move through the episodes as fast as possible.
No. It's the third episode. The third episode is that she's outside of the hex. And
oh, she breaks out of the hex, right?
You see all of the modern day
Sword and
stuff.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I think that's
right.
good.
Yeah,
I think it is a very clear, like, okay, like something is happening inside of there. Like the people are monitoring this. That's why I like it. I felt very unsatisfied with that hand like watching it and then closing a book. I'm like, what does that mean? Like what? And I didn't feel like I can't wait for next episode because it doesn't get addressed again until the third episode. So it's even in that they're letting you know that those first 3 are a story to themselves.
Yep.
Because that's the payoff is that. So I we've already said it. I think those first 3 were the natural way of.
It's the natural cut there. That's
and then
natural
I would say,
act 1 for sure.
And then I would say everything up until the Agatha all along, which I think is episode 7.
Yes, which is a really deep act 2. That's how I would see it too. I would agree.
But that feels like, because those are 2 moments where like, oh, I'm shifting my perspective of what's happening here. It's like, oh shit, okay, so there are people that are monitoring Wanda, and you even get to see some of the weird moments from the first 2 episodes explained. So I feel like, yeah, that's episode 4, but like that's a good beginning to second act. Like, all right, let's now let you understand what was happening in those first 3. That's a great way to start. And then I feel like the Agatha all along is like the next perspective shift. It's like, okay, like, so it is Wanda doing all this, but Agatha has been causing trouble the whole time.
Yep.
And I mean, yes, you probably already assumed she was Agatha, but it is confirmation, and it is like, okay, well, so like she isn't this innocent person just like being controlled as well. She is doing her own thing. And then 8 and 9 pretty much play out as one episode to me. But I think,
which is a very short act 3. Like that's what the problem is for me overall. But getting to that episode 4 where you're finding out one of my big favorite things here. And it is episode 4 where we find out Monica Rambeau. We get to know Sword and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's what starts with her appearing after the snap, like re-snapping her.
Yeah, so that episode in itself is so successful to me in so many different levels. Here's such a random and amazing performance by Teyonah Parris right away to be like, here's someone that you need to get to know, and I'm excited to talk more about her performance later because it's awesome. But the idea of like how that episode starts, like reliving all those traumas and just knowing more about the snap, right, or the blip, and it's just fantastic. And like generally understanding how big of a dick Hayward is, but the Jimmy Woo moments, oh my god,
he's great.
He is the best. He is some of the best. Like,
Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy were very strong for the outside of the hex stuff. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I was being cheated by not being back in the hex. I felt like
Mhm.
these are strong characters that I would like to also follow.
Correct. Like that, I really like their stuff for
And
sure.
if this was an earnest show, you could be doing that.
Yes.
It's just, it's such a tightly written show that they only really are there to serve what's going to happen next, because they all
Mhm.
kind of taper off.
Yeah. Yes, they do. But yeah, the Jimmy Woo stuff, like I just all the stuff he does that he learns inspired from the Ant-Man movies is just hilarious to me, because it even factors into him getting out of handcuffs at the end of
Mhm. Yeah.
the series, and it's just like this
Flourish.
is the best. This is the best. It's so good. That's where this show really succeeds, is that element of like that Marvel magic of like, oh yeah, we're having callbacks from actions from previous movies, and that really works well from like
Yeah, I would say
those
that
mini characters.
this show succeeds in deepening characters that we like. Technically,
Mhm.
we already knew Monica. Obviously, she wasn't played by Tiana Paris when we knew her, but we did already know her. We already knew Darcy. We already knew Jimmy. We already knew Vision. We already knew Wanda.
Mhm.
And I've said in past episodes, like I think it was the Ant-Man and the Wasp episode, I'm like, what I like about sequels is either like you do a shift of
Mhm.
the character like Ragnarok, or you deepen the understanding of them like a Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where you have like a deeper understanding what these characters are doing. And I think
Mhm.
this show was definitely this is a deeper understanding of these characters.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you even get a shift at the
Mhm.
end for Wanda and for Monica, but it is these deeper understandings of these characters that you feel like, I know that Wanda and Vision were like full on Avengers, but I never really cared about them until this show.
Yes,
Um,
because they were never like if the core group, you know, I mean, the core
no,
group
they
of
were the
Avengers,
core group. I just didn't like them. I just was like,
no,
I
I
don't
mean,
care.
from like the writing standpoint, they were always like vehicles of like the main or the bigger story overall. And in some stuff, like in the Wanda situation, like she's like, oh, the accidents, and like I love how this movie really, I mean, this series
Sure, yeah.
really cements why she was having all those issues, because like there's all this magic stuff that you should have learned, and you just like never bothered to do it. So she's, now that she's learning it, ooh, but like it works so well to deepen those understandings, because even the Darcy stuff, it knowing that she didn't blip and she used those 5 years to get her astrophysicist
Mhm.
doctorate is awesome. It's so cool. Like what like I'm sure we'll find out in more media what she was doing with that degree. Was she trying to help Jane? Was she trying to get Jane back? Like what happened to Jane? Like all this kind of situation, all this kind of stuff. Or was she working more with a character you don't like particularly like too much, that Selvig guy? But you know, like all those little things help us broaden that understanding of those this world, and I think that show succeeds so well at that.
Mm-hmm. I think they did a good job of doubling down on some characters and making
Mhm.
you care about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is by far the most I've liked Vision and Wanda. I feel like this was really like they
Mhm.
got like 2 moments of genuine like pathos out of them. Like for me, I'm sure people will say there was more, but like
Right.
I did really like their goodbye. I really liked that moment when they showed you them at the compound. Like that
Yep.
was all really nice stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's 4 sets that up. 5 is the Pietro one, right?
I believe. I can't recall, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was.
5 was really, yeah, it would have had to be, because 5 was really good for basically Vision is now like, all right, like something's up. Like I
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. That's why I mean, we won't get back into it, but that's why I was like, once you know what Agatha really wants, I don't even really know what the like benefit of messing with Vision's mind is.
I think it's just to add to the whole like breaking Wanda down, making her weak and deceiving her, and like all those kind of things, because it really did add up. Because yeah, in the next episode, in episode 6, she continues to play that ploy on Vision as well as Wanda too, right? So I think that her continuous mind games on everyone throughout the whole series is just awesome. It's just so
No,
awesome.
don't get me wrong. I get that it's good to watch.
Mhm.
I just feel like based on what she wants, there was a really direct way of doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
And that's why I think like I love toward the end where she just gives up. It's like, all right, fine. Everything that I've tried to do up until now wasn't working. I'm just going to full on, here we go. We're just going to confront the issue. Let's talk about how you did this so I can take that power.
Mhm.
I like that. It worked.
So yeah, because basically what I'm saying is I'm not saying, hey, why didn't you just sneak up behind her and take the power? I understand that she
Right.
was trying to understand what Wanda knew about it, but
Mhm.
that is independent of what Vision is doing.
Yes.
It seems like you would have her be more one-on-one with Wanda. If it was like, I just need Vision out of here, or
Mhm.
I just need to get some alone time with her.
Mhm.
Sure, but I don't know that they successfully let me know that's what she was trying to do. It just seemed like it's what you're talking about of like, I'm just carrying chaos everywhere, which isn't really what she was trying to do.
No, that's not directly what she was trying to do, but it's a vehicle towards it, which was kind of cool. But you're right. I mean, there's certain things where you're like, did you need to do that? No. But the idea of like honestly pulling those strings and even like aging her children now, just
everything
to,
to do with the kids makes sense because that's testing her powers.
Oh, absolutely.
Whatever she was doing with Vision, I'm like, what? Like, that's not going to do anything.
Mhm.
You're not going to learn anything from that.
Yep.
But yeah, the 5th episode was great because it is the break between Wanda and Vision. He's no longer like, well, I'll just do whatever you say. He's got his own thoughts. He's like, wait, what are you doing to these people? Like, why? Like, what's this happening? And they have that amazing moment where she tries to roll credits so that it can be done. And he's like, no, like, you can't do that. I'm still here. And they almost fight. And I really like that. It's this eerie, like there's a bunch of eerie moments throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
But like that was a really eerie moment because it wasn't like horror. It was just like, holy shit, like she's really, even with the person she loves, she's not letting them be. Like she's like really manipulating this. That's such a like unsettling moment where she's like, I'm done. And like the credits roll and he just keeps going through it. I'm like, wow. That I thought that was very effective and I really liked it. And then yes, you get the Pietro reveal.
And
but
that was so crazy to me because it was just like one of those moments where you're like, that Pietro reveal at that time was so well done because it was one of those things where you wouldn't actually believe that argument would finish the way it was escalating unless something like that had occurred.
Yeah.
Because it was like such a what the fuck moment, even for them. It's just like Vision and Wanda. You can't continue to fight in front of this guy who's like, what's going on? So naturally having that moment was great. And the one thing from that episode that I thought was absolutely amazing too was when Vision uses his powers to look at what I think it's Norm, right? Norm, and just to tap him and cut the strings loose for a minute, and how his response was genuinely horrified and like everything. Such a great moment in the show. I think it was one of the strongest things, and it just added to that like end roll credit thing where she's like, nope, I'm gaslighting you, I'm dismissing you right now. And like where he's protesting, he's like, he has a family, he can't reach them, he's like this, he's like this, he's like, he's in pain, and like it's adding that, and he's like, nope, I don't want to hear any of this. It was such a great way of being like, whoa, what's Wanda doing right now? Is
or
she
even when he's like, you can't control me, and she's like, well, can't I?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like I really liked all the building blocks to her being like, maybe I'm just the villain. Like maybe, maybe I'm not the good guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I should stop trying to be the good guy. I think that was great. And then episode 6 is, I think, retrospect, when you know what the full point was, pretty good in terms of knowing that basically he's just saying, Quicksilver is just saying whatever Agatha needs to know, like to get, like he's prying for information to like really figure this out. Like I really like that idea that it was like, you mean I would love it if I could have brought your actual brother back, but that was a non-starter. So it's just this guy, and yeah, it really was just the trope of like TV recasting people, and then another inside joke of like, oh, it's the guy that played Quicksilver in another thing, and they both were in Kick-Ass. It's I get those meta moments. I don't think if they could have it back, they would want a whole week or more than a week, because it's never confirmed until like episode 8. I think that he's just not Quicksilver. I don't think that I think if they could have that back, they wouldn't want the 2 to 3 weeks of people being like, oh, so this is how they bring the X-Men in. I think they would have rather that all be together and that you have the full context of what's going on, and that could just live as a fun nod to what has happened in the past.
My thing with that episode is, now with Agatha controlling it, does that mean Agatha was able to give him his powers in regards to the quick speed and all that kind of stuff? Oh, it was the beads that was doing it.
That's how I took it. I know people are saying no, that's not true. I'm saying, as someone who is hoping that these writers aren't being sloppy, that it's the beads that gave it to him, because we already saw. I also took it as he's the person Jimmy Woo was looking for, but I guess that I'm wrong about that. I thought he was the missing person.
That's interesting. We never did find out who the missing person was. We just found out
only because it was like he's in witness protection and his name is Ralph Boner, and I was like, that seems like something you would do if you were in witness protection. You'd be like, oh, my name's Boner. Can that be my last name?
Yeah,
because he laughed at the last name. He wasn't like, yeah, that's my name. He's just like Boner. That's how I took it. People are saying he's just an actor, and I'm like, all right. I don't think is that well defined, and I'm sure they're trying to leave room for something. But I feel like watching it just the one time, I was like, okay, so the beads are what kind of controlled him. She knows what he needs to be able to do, so she can make that happen. And then once that was broken, he wasn't able to do anything anymore. And maybe that's the person Jimmy Woo was looking for, and that's why he wouldn't have shown up on the thing, because everyone's looking for this missing person. And that's her Ralph, and that's the payoff for the Ralph running gag. That's the payoff for who the missing person was. And also, it's just making it clear, no, he's not Quicksilver. That's how I took it.
Yeah, okay, because that was one question one big burning question I had for you, because that was one of the biggest things in this final episode. Was like, I'm like, but wait, they made a point to show you his powers and even the animations that were similar to Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver and all that kind of stuff. So he's got the same spectrum of powers and all that kind of stuff, but like, and I guess it was the success of Agatha's like illusions to be like, no, this is how it was done. But even the kids had the same powers of like the Quicksilver. But I guess that would have been more Wanda's ability to control. Yeah, that's Wanda's ability to control things, because she can just control everything.
Well, she just created beings. So yeah.
Spontaneous combustion, as it were to say with Agatha Harkness.
Well,
and that's
Agatha
crazy.
Said she did the crystal whatever possession. I don't remember the terminology she is, but yeah, she just possessed someone's body to do what she needed it to do.
Right.
And I feel like it's a clean thing if that's Ralph, yes, but that's also the missing person that Jimmy Woo was sent there to look for, or decided he wanted to go look for.
Sure. I agree.
But yeah, I don't know. But I liked episode 6 for just the way he kept needling them, like, hey, look, this is what you wanted. I'm the brother that comes out of town and I cause tension. And I'm like, this is what you wanted, right? Like
purely writing about like everything that Agatha does is like she's recognizing that it is a television show. So it's like, here are the common sitcom tropes that we're putting in to every single thing. Even like the guest star episode is like, yep, this is what a guest star episode would look like in a sitcom. It's really, really well done. She's like playing all those different elements. I really like her character for sure. Like,
it's a great character. I'm glad she's not dead. But yeah,
the way she's trapped is horrifying, though. I will say it's horrifying.
Episode 7, all I remember is that's Agatha all along. But episode 7 that's the Modern Family.
Modern Family episode.
It's the 2010s. It's
throwbacks. I
thought she was doing a great job of being whatever Dunphy. Well, I can't remember her name now. Claire Dunphy.
Yeah,
I thought she was so good at that. I even liked that the title sequence obviously was like The Office, but also
it was a Modern
Happy
Family.
Endings.
Happy endings.
It was Happy Endings, which is
a Rousseau brother thing, right? They produced something like that. It was really, they made some happy endings episodes and like their community gags, and I really like that because there's even like we'll get to the final. We'll talk about the final episode, that Easter egg there too, which is kind of cool. But that episode was really really fun. The Agatha reveal. I mean, that was like the confirmation point. So that's one critique too. Is like that reveal itself should have been a talking point of itself, but because of the reaction culture and everything like that, it just spun it into like more and more Mephisto talk, which took away from the Agatha Harkness stuff. Which I'm like, that did suck.
So here's the thing. I think you still can afford for people to be like that, because for me, episode 8 completely dispelled any kind of like, I remember we had the conversation offline of like, she's obviously not working with anyone. This is just her show. And you weren't the only one, but people were like, but she has to be like, there's going to be someone else that's like working there. And I'm like, no, episode 8 is pretty clear. Like, this is just her doing, not the Hex, but like, she's on a solo mission. It shows you right away. Like, she doesn't work with others. She is her own thing. Yeah. Episode 9 even doubles down again of like, I see people with powers. If they don't deserve them, I take them.
Yep.
And that's her thing.
I think the one thing that is very, very interesting with Agatha and why it could have potentially, because that whole like Ralph things and You're Scratchy, all those like Easter eggs alluding that could possibly mean other things, but the idea of like maybe she was trying to bring back her husband, because in every single episode, like the one episode where the kids get introduced and there's the dog episode with Sparky, Agatha breaks character when she's with the kids and Wanda, and goes like, wait, you can do that? Like, you can bring people back from the dead and all this kind of stuff, to be like, wait, you can like, this is the extent of your power.
I don't read it that way. No,
you don't.
The only thing I read from that episode that was a hint was, and I feel like it's weird that no one talks about it, is when she's like, hey, let me hold the babies, and they're like, no, and she breaks character and goes, no, you want me to hold the babies. She didn't ask. She wasn't like, oh, like, should I take it again? Do you want me to? She's like, we're going to take it again, right? Like, I should take it again because you want me to hold the babies. That is her manipulating. And I feel like the whole you can do that is more like, is this like, I'm going to find out this is the Scarlet Witch. Like, if she can do that, she's the Scarlet Witch. This is great. Like, can you really do that? I don't ever think it was like, oh, like, because like she does that another time as well, like, oh, you can do that, and I'm like, yeah, because she's like, oh, like, am I like, is this really happening? I'm finding the Scarlet Witch. I thought this was just like some idiot that like
it's a myth.
A couple of things, but no, I mean like what she thought of Wanda. I think she just thought of Wanda as like, okay, you did this, but like, how powerful are you really? And then I think she just keeps building a case of like, okay, like, I'm pretty sure this is the Scarlet Witch,
right?
She definitely doesn't deserve that. I'm gonna take it from her.
Sure. Yeah, especially
that's what I'm saying. Like, 7 is a good break for me, because it's like Agatha all along. Sure, let people speculate for a week on what that means, because right away you dispel those myths. It's not like it doesn't get dispelled until it's like, sure, that's a fun week of speculation, but then you get an answer right away as to what she's actually doing, as opposed to what I'll always go back to the Quicksilver thing. That doesn't get paid off until the end.
Correct.
So like, you're letting people talk about that for so long without addressing it. I don't think that's, and again, that's not the writer's fault. Like, they're writing whatever they're writing. And I'm sure now that this has happened, even if they thought it was a good idea to go week to week, I'm sure they would want that back, to not have that many weeks before that gets answered. I think the Agatha thing is fine, only because it is an answer right away. It might be a disappointing answer for people, but it is like, sure, speculate, have all your fun, but we are letting you know right now that's not what's happening.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying like, speculation is not bad. It's just like, you need to know, like, there's a way of doing it that works.
I agree. There's deserved speculation, and then there's like speculation for the sake of it. It's just like, oh, the cup was turned that way. What does that mean? And it's like, in this, like, and we're like really throwing everything on. It's just like, oh, that's exhausting. But when you're right. When it's like, oh, the Agatha Harkness ooh, we can speculate a lot about that. And then now the payoff in the immediate episode is so incredibly good because I love this episode. I love this episode so much, the previously on episode.
Oh, so 8. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it works like 4.
Mhm.
Again, another good episode to follow up an act break on, because it's like, okay, you thought it was something before, and now let's show you what's really going on.
Yep.
And it goes even further because you're going into her past as well.
Because this to me is the cut for Act 2, like the end of Act 2. If we were to like recut this whole thing, this would be the Act 2, which means like Act 8, or like Act 3, which is episode 8 and 9. It's very, very short, and that's an issue for me. But the episode itself, everything that happens within 8, and I don't want to say episode again because we're protesting the fact that these are considered air quote episodes.
I'm fine with calling them episodes. That's like, there's still episodes of Umbrella Academy. It's just they all come out at once.
That's fair. Yes, it's release schedule format. And I think, like, I'm hoping that once Disney does get to a bigger release slate where it has Marvel stuff to release, and then Star Wars stuff, and then all Disney original content and all that kind of stuff, that it ends up being more like, no, here's an episode dump, the same, like, to build up into that world. That's what I'm hoping they get to at some point.
Or just trust your product audience, and don't be like, okay, like, let's like someone I watched the New Rockstars this morning of like Eric Voss gets the sense that the director was actually mad at Paul Bettany when he said what he said, because he's like, well, he got himself into this mess, he can get himself out of it. Like, yeah, like I genuinely believe the people who actually made the show are like, what the, like, this is spinning out of control. Like, we're not like, as an artist, I can see the unfulfillment of like, well, you're not even talking about what I did. You're just talking about like what you want to have happen in general.
Correct. Yeah. That's, I'm wondering how the actors and like the production team and all that kind of stuff feel. Like it does, whether or not someone is upset that the spotlight is being put on not the actual show itself, but whatever, and where the finger is being pointed for blame. Is it this? I guess it is. It is the business. A lot of
it's a lot of people contributed to this issue, but like, it's not just one group in particular.
People showed up with matches and fire and fans. Right. That's what happened.
But yeah, episode 8 is great. Previously on, really good. Again, it has that moment with them at the compound that I really liked. It has. You just
that really, line, that line of dialogue. Vision's dialogue is just the best. What?
Yeah.
The grief line. What is it? He said,
"What is grief if not
grief
love
if not love persevering?" That is one of the most beautiful things ever. And then, oh God, when we talk about like episode 9,
I want to say in episode 8 for a bit, but
for sure.
I'm glad you liked that episode 9 fight. That was a highlight for me of the show. But I think episode 8, not only is it showing that, but it is just showing, like, I feel like that's just really pushing the grief. Like, you can probably figure it out ahead of time, how much grief she's had, but like seeing that moment where she has like the plot and it just says to grow old in with a heart, and like that's also really upsetting, and just the reaction that gives her, like, that was wild. I thought that was really well done. And I even like that Agatha was touched by it. Like, I think people think she was being sarcastic, but I'm like, she wasn't. Like, Wanda didn't see her, and at that point in the show, it's not a TV show anymore. It's not like this is being broadcast, so she's not doing it for someone. I think she just was genuinely touched by their connection. I like that they gave her that moment of being touched by them as well.
That was really, really fantastic. She wanted the power, but like it's hard not to be touched by that moment. That moment,
like, it didn't stop her from being like, I want your power. She was like, oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. It's too bad I have to do this now.
Well, no, I think she's probably like, you don't need these powers. You just want him. So just give me the powers, you idiot. And
she even makes that proposal. She makes that
that's
pitch.
in episode 9. But I think it's still a nice thing to show that, like, she's not just pure power hungry evil she has wants and needs and feelings, and that touched her, and I liked
Yeah.
that moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And I liked no, I don't know if there's not a lot of kid stuff in 8, right? Like that was 7 and 6.
The kid stuff
Yeah.
is
I did
basically
skip over the
gone.
fact that
Yeah.
I genuinely liked the kids. I thought at first I was gonna be like, ugh, kids, but I liked them. I liked this. The Speed one didn't really have much to say, but
Right.
Wiccan I thought was a pretty interesting character. Just the way he'd be like, yeah, like I like it in your house. It's quiet. Like obviously the fact that he doesn't have to hear a bunch of people in pain anymore when he's at her house. He's like, but you're empty inside. That's weird.
Yep.
But I liked him, and I liked that I liked their little moment in episode 9 where they get to help out, like the whole like Incredibles moment. I'm like, yeah, good. They didn't fumble it. It wasn't like I felt like, oh, how could they possibly? It was like, yeah, you can take out the stupid like human guards like that don't really. They're definitely like out of their league in this situation. Yeah, the kids can.
Oh yeah,
I like that.
Everything about the kids made perfect sense to me. They were well written. It was good acting. Even I liked them, and it was the idea of like actually. The funny thing is about this is how successful those kids were to me. I would actually not mind seeing them back. You know what I mean? But the unfortunate
in the comics,
issue,
they are part of the Young Avengers, which it seems like they're building to by having
Correct.
characters like Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop.
Yep.
And rumors about who's going to show up in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and then Kamala
they have
Khan.
Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's part of Young Avengers, but yeah.
Well, whether or not she is part of Young Avengers, it seems like one of those things that it doesn't matter too much to Marvel at this point. They just might put her there because of age and where it would naturally go. Yeah. And I do like that. It seems like it would be a fun cast of kids to actually follow along, whether or not in a movie or in its own Disney series. That would be a lot of fun. Like that would to me be at the pinnacle of what Disney series would be about like teenage like nonsense with superhero powers. That's awesome.
I just feel like for the next while I'll be watching movies from home anyway, so it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Right. I would watch it.
Yeah.
Like I get the idea of like, am I really going to the theater for like a kids movie? But if it's all at home, I don't care. Make it a movie, make it a Disney Plus show. I don't care. Like I just want to watch it. But yeah, so yeah, that's 8. Is you're really like, and what understanding Agatha and Wanda. You understand what Agatha is all about. You understand what Wanda is trying to accomplish. You also find out that she didn't steal Vision at all. She just created him.
Yeah, that was Hayward's sliminess on full display to be like, yep, he's slimy. He edited or cut or like manipulated the footage to show everyone's like, and then he filled in the narrative, because that's one thing I really realized when he showed the footage and all that kind of stuff. This is what she did. It's like, yeah, but when you see it from her actual perspective and her memories and the reality, this is what actually happened. She left the body. He just cut to, and he's manipulated the footage.
That was a moment I liked, that she went over the body. She's like, I don't feel you. And that's the big Infinity War like rhyming thing of like, I only feel you. It's just you. And I like that. I'm like, yep. Then why would she need that if he's not in there? And then you realize he's in her. Like she can just make it. I'm like, that's really good writing. I think that's amazing. It's not shining a light on anything. It's just like you can see, like, okay, she went to get him, and then was like, oh, I'm like, what's the point of this? If I'm gonna just bury a bunch of vibranium for nothing, like this isn't him. So I'm out. And then she brings him to life with like through grief or whatever. But like it is like, yeah, that made sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point of the show, I'm kind of like, what were we doing with all the like they can watch WandaVision? Like that all seemed to like fall apart for me. I was just like, and maybe I just have to rewatch it, but I'm like, what was the point of her broadcasting that?
Or her broadcasting her own show?
Yeah, like I didn't really get that.
I don't think that there was a point to it. I just think that she was so unaware of what she was actually doing within the context
But
of creating that sitcom
correct,
reality
but
that it
then there
had
was
to
stuff
be
like where they're like, hey,
broadcasted.
they edited that, or hey, and I'm like, but like who and what like why is that happening?
That is the part that's weird. That's like, okay, well, if it was Agatha, why would Agatha edit it? Did
Well,
Agatha
I
know that
get the sense
people
that she
outside were
wasn't
watching it,
editing
right?
it. She didn't care about any
No,
of that. Yeah.
I don't think she was either. I think it was pure Wanda, because it was always like the bee, like the evidence is the beekeeper recognizing the sword logo. She's like, no, and then it just cuts. Even in the episode where it was like they're having that argument, she just rolls over. So the thing is, like, she's in full control of the writing of the episodes and how the episodes play
Right,
out
but
and all that
those
kind of
are
stuff. But why is
explained.
it being, yes?
Yeah, and
But
then there's other
you're right.
stuff that's edited that you're like, what?
Mhm.
Why?
But the question of why would she edit it? Why would she broadcast what's going on in there? Did she want to be like, oh, I want a sitcom style life, and that includes broadcast?
I like your explanation, but she
Mhm.
just flat out didn't understand what she's doing, because that goes to Agatha's point of like, look at all this shit you're doing, and you don't even know how you're doing. Like, you don't know what you're doing. This is stupid. Give it to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, I firmly believe that, like, Wanda's just that character that, like, really didn't understand what she was doing, because the evidence is throughout her entire character in the MCU is like, okay, look at Civil War. Yeah, she was like, okay, I'm gonna. She didn't know what she's doing. She threw, like, what's her face, Crossbones up, and he exploded and killed a whole bunch of people and all that kind of stuff. Gets grounded and like gets sent to her room, so to speak. So, like, the evidence is very, very clear that she didn't know what she was doing. Now, the really interesting thing is, of course, now having the Darkhold and learning about witchcraft and all this kind of stuff, it becomes way more interesting. I do have questions about the meta, but I will to you, but I
Yeah.
will save that until we finish the reviewing the final episode.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to point out before we get to the final episode too is the incredible photon or spectrum or Monica Rambeau transformation scenes, and what the stuff she's building up into, and what a successful origin story here, where it's like, I think the idea of Marvel recognizing that we don't want origin stories anymore. They're getting really, really bland and played out and follow the same template, aka Iron Man and Doctor Strange movies, exact same template. So the
I
idea of like,
disagree
okay,
with
let's.
that, but yeah.
You disagree? Well, the
Yeah.
idea of like
I think it's
fitting
it's a
in.
real flip thing to be like, they were both rich and then they got injured and now they're dead. I'm like, you didn't watch the movie then. You just decided to like have that hot take. I understand there's similar beats in an act, like in a superhero movie, but
But
like I feel like they're fundamentally different stories.
they are fundamentally different, but what I'm saying is that we're tired of that story structure in that beat, that linear telling. Even they tried to take a chance with Captain Marvel stuff to be like, no, we're telling the origin story this way, and I'm like, that was really, really good, and I think a lot of people positively respond to that. So the idea
No,
of
they
like
didn't.
telling, well,
People did not like that movie, and I've heard
we
people
liked.
say
Yeah, that's true.
specifically, yeah, we liked it, but
We liked it. Sorry, I
that's why I'm
forget
saying
that.
I disagree. That's why I'm
Yeah,
saying I disagree, because
that's
people
fair.
say they don't like it, and
Mhm,
then you get something like Captain Marvel, like, that's too confusing, I don't get it, and
mhm.
then they're like,
Whereas we thought
okay,
it was
so
clever
yeah, whereas
and
we
well
liked it,
done.
but that's because we're engaging with the movies. I
True.
think that like,
That's true.
if you, because the people that say Iron Man is the same as Doctor Strange are the same people that are like, and Black Panther's just a fun Marvel movie, it was just the same formula. Like, they're not engaging with the movies. They're
That's
just
true.
like, they have their opinion, and that's what that is.
Yeah, they're putting in. Yeah, you're right. Not engaging is a good way of putting it, for sure.
Yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, it's another Marvel movie. And then
Yep.
yeah, at that point you could just be like, yeah, I get it. He was rich and then he
Mhm.
got into an accident and then he changed or whatever. But
Mhm.
like, great. Like, and you can say that for a bunch of things. Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
is that
that's
how you
true.
watch westerns? Is that how you like? That's
I mean, according
is that
to
how
the
you watch
hero's
mystery
journey.
movies? Is that how you watch mystery? Yeah, like they
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on, and then they figured it out. It's the same. Like, it's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
At that point, you have
how
to
far are we willing to dissect, right? Because it does
yeah,
become the hero's journey at the end of every single
yeah.
movie
You have to
breaks down
invest in the
into the hero's
characters.
journey. Yeah.
You have to invest in the characters. If you're not invested, then sure, you can have as many cool, like, snarky hot takes as you want, but but yeah.
But anyways, I did like that whole um origin element of Photon, it looks like, who is gonna get the name because of her mom's call signal in
I
the
just feel like
sword
it's got to
thing.
be Spectrum because that's how they showed it. Is like there was a
There's
spectrum
yeah,
of her life,
spectrum of
like they
light or
showed
spectrum
a
of everything. Yeah.
light, but like her life, you just saw like her 4 different phase, like
Mhm.
stages in life,
Yeah.
and like that she is a spectrum of different people to different,
Yeah.
like she's a different person to different people. Yeah. And Photon is whatever. I actually don't care what they call her. And we
Yeah.
went how many movies without ever giving Scarlet Witch her name? So
That's true.
like
I feel like Spectrum is actually a little bit more likely than Photon in the sense where it seems like this Monica Rambeau is like, no, I want to not be tied down by my past. We've done like in this
yeah,
whole
like her
series.
mom is already Photon.
Yeah, like my mom's Photon. Why would I be Photon again? I would be Spectrum again. Yeah, I would like my power is on a wavelength spectrum or whatever it is, or energy on energy spectrums. Why don't I be called Spectrum? And I'm like, Spectrum, I think is a little bit cooler than Photon.
We'll
But
see.
We'll see what happens.
Because she's gonna be back in Captain Marvel too. We'll see if she gets a name.
And she's gonna be sick because her power is sick, and I love that actress. She is great.
I want to see more of her.
Yes.
I
want her to have a solo, obviously.
I'm mixed on the Monica Rambeau stuff because I feel like it starts off really strong and then you're kind of like, yeah, after like episode 7, she's gone.
Mhm.
And I know it's only just the one episode, but it's like such a lack of momentum that then she shows up. I mean, I'm hoping she knew she wouldn't die, but then she just sacrifices herself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not the best place to put the black character, but okay.
Yeah. I'm hoping she
and then
knew she had powers because she was like using them a little bit, right?
She was, but I get the sense from watching her that she's just a hero. Like she's the same idea as Captain America.
She's heroic.
Steve Trevor. Like she would have done that even if she didn't have the powers. She's the one
Correct.
that was like, she's the one that had the like bravery to just be like, well, I'm just gonna go in. Like even though Jimmy was like, oh, it doesn't want us to go in. She's like, well, I'm gonna go in. And then she did it again with her truck and was like, that didn't work, but I'm pretty sure I can just do it. Like, so yes, there is space for me to believe that she was like, well, nothing bad will happen to me. But I'm just like, I wish her superpowers were more than just like in service to the white characters of like, I'll save you. Shoot, go ahead, shoot me. So that's where I'm mixed on that because I do feel that like, while she's a great actor and she had some amazing moments early on, it kind of fizzles out for me in terms of how she was used.
Fair enough. But I think that speaks to how short the final act of this series is, being the 2 episodes, albeit like slightly longer at 42 and 49 minutes or something like that. But even then, it just feels a lot shorter because from a week to week standpoint, we don't have that much time to sit with, here's the final act. But at the same time, that works well because I think the exhaustion that we're getting, or that at least I've gotten,
acts don't have to be equal parts, right? And I
They
don't
don't.
think that it's that short. I think
they don't. But then one
like
of the
how
biggest
long can
things
you
is
continue that? You kind of have to have it be a bit more tight.
I get that.
Act.
I get that. I just find that the final act was short, and that's where maybe a little bit more Monica Rambeau could have happened. But either way, wouldn't have changed the purpose of the character, and that's where your complaint principally is. So it's that wouldn't have done anything for you. In that situation though, I guess we're talking about the final episode.
Yeah, we're there.
We're definitely there.
So yeah,
this was a doozy.
I enjoyed it. I thought that was a good way to end it. I feel like it kind of confirmed like, well, yeah, like they're all bad guys, not Photon, or sorry, not Monica Rambeau.
Yes.
She's the hero. Jimmy Woo is a hero. Darcy is a hero. But it's like Hayward's bad, Wanda's bad, Agatha's bad, and it's just you're just watching like, I feel like a pretty good version of like, yeah, it's a movie of bad guys. It's like, like you're actually able to focus on evildoers, and like, I get that we want Wanda to be good, but like this show the whole time is like,
it's painting her as selfish.
Remember, selfish, but also like remember when those people attack her, unconscious or not, her reaction was, "I'll choke them out."
Yes.
And it wasn't like they weren't justified in approaching her. And I'm not saying just sit there and let them punch you, but it was like, see, you could have put a bubble around yourself, you could have blocked them out, but your reaction was, I'll just choke them.
Because
she
even
caught herself, but it was like, that was your first move.
That was the first move
to death.
And even then, it was like the idea of the way those townspeople were like really, really protesting and like pleading for their lives. Like, I remember what Dottie was saying. The idea of like, I have a daughter. Please, she's 6. Maybe you can cast her as one of your son's best friends or something like that. She just, I just haven't seen her in like weeks or something like that. The idea of like, she put all the kids under just deep sleep, so not to traumatize them, but like how it's fucking with
she even was parents. Like, can I just hold her, like, please?
That's crazy, you know, like that was. And then with I forget what her human character is, but I'm just going to call her
Deborah Jo
Kitty Jo Rupp, Kitty from That 70s Show. The idea of like, well, if you're not gonna like let us do this, then let us die or something like that. Like, it got to that bad for her. I'm like, holy crap.
Well,
like,
just imagine having like, because they said anytime you let us sleep, we just have your nightmares.
So she was like fully not aware of those things. The idea of like Monica Rambeau being like, I don't believe that this is a pre-planned terrorist like thing. Like Hayward goes like, it's a terrorist thing. It's like, no, it's not pre-planned. It wasn't political. It's none of those things. This is not intentional. Even though it's not intentional, it's horrifying. Even like the last little bits of like, okay, I will break the hex, but then like that final moment of a little bit of selfishness of like, at least let me say bye to them this time. You know, like that was crazy of like, oh, we're still being a little bit selfish. But at that point in time, it was, I guess, the justification of like, we got to beat Agatha or whatever. Or actually, no, that's not true. Making the hex was the physical space, I guess. She can't just to cast the ruins. So I guess I guess it was further justified. But yeah, it's horrifying, like the way they were like protesting her and all that kind of stuff. And then choking them out was what she did.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
I mean, I liked the visual of it, but she even went back to like when she was a villain in Age of Ultron and like put the hex on Agatha. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad that she did that to the other bad guy. But then it turned on her. I'm like, holy fuck! Like, she's really out of her league. And then I was happy that she did the ruins thing, and she's like, yeah, thank you for teaching me that. Like, I got you. Like, nice. Good for you, Wanda.
Really good stuff.
But yes, as you alluded to, what she does to Agatha is fucked. When she's like,
it's horrifying,
is all gonna go
man.
away, but you will mentally still be living in this.
Knowing that it's like, this is what it's doing and all this kind of stuff. And it was just like, Agatha wasn't like a threat on anyone. She was just a selfish person.
Well, she is a threat. It's just she wasn't a threat to those immediate people.
I guess you wouldn't know what Agatha would have wanted, but yeah, that it's a horrifying finale for that character. And obviously it's written in a way where we're going to see her again in some capacity, breaking free. And God, I can only imagine what she's going to try to do the moment she's like released from that hell that Wanda puts her in. That's insane. That's absolutely insane, because like even Agatha, once she realizes she can't get the powers, is like protesting and has a human moment of being like, you're cruel, you're a cruel person. And like she goes ahead and proves that right away. It's like, no, I know what this is going to do to you. I'm going to do it anyways. And it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I really liked when she was like, wow, you're like, yeah, it's just like hey, fuck you, man, you're cruel.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like, they give you so much evidence, even in dialogue here, where it's like, heroes don't torture people, Wanda. Like, that was great. But I think one of the things that I really want to talk about is that Vision fight.
Yeah, it was great.
Just the idea of, we got what we wanted to see from the battle itself. Like, the fight itself was amazing. Like, the visuals of like, how would Vision fight himself if he has the exact same powers? That was great, because it was like, you can't punch him, he just phased through everything. And the fact that they visually do that all the time was great. And to the point where it's like, no, I have to beat him with my mind. Like mental chess moves was the best thing ever.
That's kind of like what is set up in
Mhm.
well, I mean, from the beginning, from Age of Ultron, it's his like you have to appeal to
Yes.
the logic of everything, right? Like
Yes.
even
And
in
I
Age
love
of
that.
Ultron when he's like, well, like, yeah, things aren't beautiful because they last. Like, so you can't just justify killing off the Earth because they are gonna kill themselves anyway. Like
Right.
it's not gonna work that way. And same in Civil War when he's like, well, yeah, like if we're around, we're gonna it's
Our
the
strength,
escalation
like,
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
like
our presence invites challenge, and it's like the most, like everything Vision does.
and
I
so
love
then
his
when
character.
he's faced with himself, it's like, look, the Theseus ship thing, like, is it like
Is it still a
you were
ship
sent
if you
to
recreate it?
you
Yeah.
were sent to kill the real Vision, but like obviously I'm not the real Vision.
Mhm. Neither of us are, but we both are at the same time. I'm like, the conclusion in itself was like, holy shit, this is so philosophically awesome. And it's such a great way of doing it, because even the fight in itself, where it's like, it's so logical that he can be overpowered and destroy everything, but he's like, no, I'm choosing to fight just this person. The threat is just this sentient programmed machine, arguably the new Ultron. Whether or not that's going to happen, but or whether or not it stays like Vision, we'll talk about that in this, I guess. But like that fight, that Theseus boat example
ship,
was so great. I can that writing is so good. That every Vision moment, wonderful.
And I liked, yeah, and then that leaves us with saying goodbye to the kids, which was rough. And then when
but
she
I love
says
the way they did it.
Yeah, and I loved when they said goodbye to each other. When he was just like, yeah, like we've said goodbye a couple of times, so it stands to reason we'll say hello again. And I was like, that's a nice way of leaving that.
It's really a great way of leading that, especially from a comic book movie or medium standpoint, is the sense where of like, yeah, you can always come back, and you can always come back, because as long as the logic of like the Mind Stone,
I wouldn't lead into the comic bookness of it. I just like the actual thought of like,
I like the actual thought, but I like the comic book stuff too, because the idea of like Wanda always being like that rationale that like, I can create you because the Mind Stone gave me my powers, and I'm connected to the Mind Stone, and the Mind, like a fraction of, so a part of you will always live in me, is absolutely beautiful. And now whether or not that part can go into the Vision, or so like the anti-Vision, the white Vision, or whatever it is a big thing, because I think one of the very interesting speculative beats, something that I thought of, is what if it was in Doctor Strange, the multiverse.
So this is what I was saying. Yeah, the comic book say yes. We're getting away from what the actual story is, and I think
absolutely,
this story is about her getting closure on that chapter of her life. So that's why I was like, I don't really care about the comic book stuff. What I care about is the more human, universal thing of like, if you have a love that deep, of like your feelings of like, if you lose someone you love to death or something, that like, you know what, like I'm sure I'll see you again somehow. Like that hope that you can have to help you move on. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not, that's why I didn't want to go down that path just yet, because I was like, I think that's good for actual writing for this show. All the talk of how this can all move forward is fine, but as I stated up top, I wanted to always see this as what this did for these characters in this show.
Yes, and it is absolutely fantastic, because to at the end of the show, you recognize like, yeah, she had to say goodbye, and it was good goodbyes, as opposed to like, what she would have actually remembered is having to destroy Vision by herself, by her own hands, because she got blipped. The fact that she got to say goodbye to her kids, all that kind of stuff. And when the post-credit scene where you see her alone, you get a sense of like resolve, or like something like something has been settled in her. She's no longer longing or something like that. There's calm in her.
No, because then you see her like rapidly going through the thing, so there's no calm. But what I liked about that visual before you see what's happening in the back is, I feel like they've done that for a couple of strong villains in the MCU, like that look like Thanos when after he snapped and got what he wanted. It's what Killmonger requested, can I just go see the sunset? Like it was still in sun. Even Age of Ultron ends with, or Ultron ends while like looking out at the sun with
Mhm.
Vision. Like, I liked that element of it, that they're like visually placing her still as a villain you can sympathize with, and maybe like,
Yes.
I know people don't like Ultron as much as I do, but I did really like Ultron, and
Mhm.
I see that like those were visuals that like we saw with those villains in their last moments,
Mhm.
where like this kind of like resolve, yes maybe, but it's more
Mhm.
like just placing them in that moment of like wanting to see the sun.
Mhm.
And I kind of liked, yeah, I liked that visual, because yeah, once you see what's happening inside it, she's furiously like either learning more
Mhm.
about this so that she can use it properly, or she is
Mhm.
looking for her kids are looking for her, but I don't think there's like a piece. It's more just like
Well,
externally, yes, maybe you
right.
could see her be a bit more quiet, but she
Mhm.
is furiously working on something.
Well, that is correct. So, what I guess was trying to get out there was the idea of like she's at peace with the whole sadness part, but it's been redirected towards this like, I have like this knowledge. I like
Well,
I
it's like
have
a
an
Tony
ability to
Stark
learn.
thing of like,
Yep.
hey, like I think I found a way to fix things. And
Right.
well, I mean, when people are listening to this, they haven't heard our Iron Man 3 episode, but like he
Yep.
decided, I'm just gonna shove this work into building a
Mhm.
bunch of suits. I feel like that was her version of that. So it's not
Yes.
actually a
It's
piece.
moving on
It's
from that
just like
chapter, but
she has
yeah.
decided that. But I did like that moment up until then of like
Mhm.
she did make peace with saying goodbye to those beings that she
Yeah.
created, her kids and Vision.
Yeah. Really, really quickly about that post-credit scene, that visual of that cabin and all that kind of stuff. Up until they got to the close-up bits where they showed her, I legit tricked myself into thinking this might be a Wolverine teaser.
That did, it did seem like maybe, oh, but oh, are they gonna bring in Wolverine?
That
I had the
really
same
crossed
thought.
my mind. It really crossed my mind because the idea of like just like maybe someone in the cabins just like getting a cup of coffee and then like bones starting to grow out of the hand and being like, what the hell kind of deal, and then just like um and then cutting away. I thought that's what it was leading to, but the idea of like they're doubling down, like no, they're really really showing you like no, the next phase of Marvel, we're dealing with, this is our big bad. It's Scarlet Witch, and
She's
it's
definitely gonna be a force to be reckoned with,
yeah,
at least until Multiverse of Madness, I feel like.
correct. And of course that's where Doctor Strange joins in. My biggest things, were you, I guess with the reveals and all that kind of stuff, I was definitely expecting Doctor Strange to show up. I'm glad that he kind of didn't. Um, and that everything was handled and settled and all that kind of stuff, because I feel like Doctor Strange would have had a different kind of resolution to the whole thing. But it's just a very very interesting thing. Now the Darkhold exists. Now we know more magic books exist. We're going to learn more about magic in this world, and it's going to be very interesting. I'm wondering if Mordo and all those kind of things, like that is what we're looking forward to, and this is
I
going to
thought for
be
sure Mordo would
wild.
show up and be like, I told you there's too many magic
I,
people.
yeah, for sure. I think that's gonna be really, really, really,
But
really
there's no
cool. I
way to
thought it was
resolve
going to
that.
be Mordo as well. Yeah. The thing I think is really, really interesting is now we have different types of magic. That's really, really cool. And we have chaos magic. I don't know what name Agatha's magic is going to be, but like Doctor Strange's like Celtic magic or whatever it is, like the different types of magic. And like, this is really, really cool. I'm wondering if
It
that's
all
going to
just
be
seems like magic to
explored.
me.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's going to be um, some like explanation of like chi in Shang-Chi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see.
it probably would be. But it's a very interesting way of being like, yeah, there's magic from different cultures, people, not just one type of magic. And that's cool. I do like that. It's
That
fun.
could be something interesting to uh, get into. We'll see.
Mhm.
But I think you're right, and that magic will play a big part in, or it feels like it. It
Yeah.
feels like this is something that could pay off
Yeah.
in later entries. Like, and again, in 2008, no one really knew that like by 2019 we would have like Endgame. It was kind of just like, oh yeah, I guess they're doing an Iron Man
Mhm.
movie, and I get they don't have the same, reasonable doubt as we did back then. But
Mhm.
I only bring that up to say like, yeah, like this could be a 10-year play, so it's not like
Yeah.
if it doesn't show up in Loki or like Shang-Chi, that it's like, well, I guess nothing's happening with it. It's just
Mhm.
they've planted the seeds and we can see how that grows over the next 10 years.
Right. Right. I think. Ooh, completely lost that train of thought. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting exploration of what magic is going to come. Oh, right. This is the question I wanted to ask you. Since we're now talking about like the future and speculation points and all that kind of stuff now, one of the biggest questions I had for you was how do you feel like this is like the Spider-Man 3 stuff now with the castings that they've had, like Jamie Foxx and like all those kind of things. Now the Peter Evans casting being Ralph, like it what does that say to you now?
Does it matter to me? I don't.
It doesn't, like so
Like
because we were like, is this the multiverse? Is this Wanda actually bringing over this person from this multiverse and all this kind of stuff? And
it
like,
wasn't though.
so it wasn't, which is why I'm like, this is going to be. I'm pretty interested in seeing what kind of thoughts and theories develop in the next little bit about how those kind of castings are going to be handled, and if it's genuinely like, oh, okay, we we fooled you. This was just to build up WandaVision. I would not appreciate that.
Well, yeah, that has been my issue. Is
Yep.
As I said, it seems like a bit of a cynical way of
Yeah.
not trusting your product.
Constant
and trying to build
misdirects.
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I
But we'll
appreciate
see.
the extent to the I guess on one hand I can appreciate the extent to which they're willing to keep the audience's enjoyment of the stuff by having these little misdirects.
But
I
is that
can
enjoying
appreciate
it, or
that.
is that just enjoying talking and hearing each other speak?
Well, I think talking and hearing each other speak about it has been a long-standing part of
That's what I'm
enjoyment of
saying.
comic book culture.
That's not
that kind of stuff.
specific to the product. So
No, it's not.
This not. They're not
There's
enjoying the product. They're
no.
enjoying hearing each other speak.
Yes, they're finding different ways to distract themselves from their own content. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my takeaway, is that like I understand that speculation is great and it's fun.
Yep.
But I see it as, and I'm not saying the two are mutually exclusive. I'm not saying you can't enjoy the show if you're just going to speculate. If that's how you enjoy the show, that's how you enjoy the show. That's great. But what I'm saying is, now that we are talking about reviewing something in a piece of content, and how like all the speculation seems immaterial because it's about how successful was the show at telling the story it wanted to tell.
Yep.
Which isn't a function of speculation. That's just, all right, we saw what we saw. What did we think?
Yep.
So yeah, and if your enjoyment was like, yeah, it was fun to like speculate on how we would see certain things over in 8 weeks, that's great. But obviously that's not what this episode's about. This episode is about like, what did we think? And it sounds like we both enjoyed it for what it actually did accomplish, and not just what it made us think was going to happen.
I think the very, very interesting thing now is some of the things in relation to how the show does relate to other things. That has yet to be seen, or will be seen over the next few little bits. But this show in itself, the episodic nature of it definitely hurt the enjoyment of it for me, because rewatch the whole thing to the audience, rewatch the whole thing from the beginning all the way to the end, and it is such a satisfying movie, the way a movie should be, or a story should be done. I'm not even going to say movie, I'm just going to say the way a story should be told is like, no, there's a satisfying beginning, middle, and end, character arcs, everything's tied up neatly. The way we suggest watching it, if they were divided up by episodes, would be like episode 1 to 3, act 1, and then between that up until like in episode 8 and 9 is act 3. So like that would, this is the only way that makes sense logically to us. That doesn't hurt it as much as the way they did cut it up. That's how I feel.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we're recording this fairly early on in terms of the release. So I haven't seen other people's reactions. I've seen Twitter stuff where people might have been upset, but like, I do believe that, if you ask me,
overall seems like people are upset.
It didn't seem like week to week worked.
No,
that's not going to help Falcon and Winter Soldier if they did the same thing, because
Yep.
obviously that's coming in the next couple of weeks. But
That's
like
coming 2 weeks from
hopefully,
now.
yeah, like I'm hoping that and Loki probably seems like it's already filmed, so it is what it is. But
Mhm.
I'm hoping that like, and we've already acknowledged they're not gonna put it out all at once. So if it's
No.
week to week, maybe dampen all the like, oh, like this cameo, like that.
Mm.
That, especially having seen it, like what an annoying thing to have in your
Yeah.
ear if you're just trying to enjoy this story. Like I especially was like, so what you, because you told me, oh, Tiana Paris confirmed we haven't seen the person yet. I'm like, well, we never did. So then what? Like, I don't know why you wouldn't just leave it at, yeah, that's who she was talking about, and who cares? Like,
Yep.
it doesn't matter. Like, it was just somebody that helped her build a thing.
Yeah. It's getting to the point now where I'm getting paranoid of these interviews, and like people are just fanning the flames and all that kind of stuff. But
Because I didn't
not
see
to read
the
too much
interview
into
where
it.
she said that. All I saw was she was like, I can't wait for you to see who it is. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, what a weird thing to double down on. But like, yeah, and whatever. Paul Bettany had fun.
He had a lot of fun.
He made a joke. But like that stuff, and I'm not saying that stuff made me like the show less. I'm just saying, like, I would hope that they don't do that again. I'm not talking about the actors. You can't really control that. Like, again, I understand the circumstances these interviews are taken in. I'm saying, like, the way that information is released, I hope they take a different approach, because overall, I think something that's really well made is going to be judged on how well it executed cameos.
I agree.
Which isn't fair.
That was definitely knocks against it and all that kind of stuff. Because now everyone's being like, oh, well, where was that aerospace engineer? Like we were like, there, everyone, now everyone's disappointed because of what they thought was going to happen as opposed to what they were supposed to get. And that's brutal, because everyone's like, oh, where's the Fantastic Four reference? Where's the X-Men reference? Where's this? And I'm like, you got all those things. It's just written in such a nice way that it didn't actually derail.
Well, I don't know if you got any of that stuff. I'm just saying they got a good, they got a well-told story.
They got a well-told story, but
it was just disseminated poorly.
Yes, but the thing with the we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, the cutting just cut it up a little bit too much. The enjoyment as well, because you feel duped.
It's the way it was the way that it was. It was the way that they came out week to week, but it was also like the fanning of the flames of like, oh, like this person said this, like, can you believe this? And it's like, that's not, like, even if they did that, that wouldn't make it better. It would just be like, okay, and I get it, it's Marvel, that's what people do, but I'm hoping that they trust their product a bit more next time around.
I agree. I
think all of that works perfectly fine for a movie where everyone sees it in the one shot. But I'm hoping they realize when you do that with a TV show, you're setting yourself up for failure every time.
I feel like if what I'm hoping for the future, not of storytelling, but for the future of how Disney and Marvel make these, what I'm hoping is that Disney Plus, obviously they're putting huge money behind to create original content, and then with Mandalorian, more Star Wars shows, more Disney shows, and everything like that, and a more regular routine release schedule, that they can actually afford to drop all the episodes at one time, as opposed so that it doesn't actually cross compete in terms of marketing materials and focus, right? If Disney Plus is promoting multiple things, like here's the High School Musical 2 season 2 delivered the same way this is being delivered, but overlapping, it's just like, that's just going to compete against itself. I'm just hoping that there's going to be so many releases on the Disney Plus platform that eventually they're going to get us to, here's the full season drop at once, just like Umbrella Academy. I do believe that Falcon Winter Soldier and Loki, like you said, are going to be, again, weekly episodic. Whether or not it's going to be a little bit more successful, Loki has the potential to be a little bit more successful based on what it kind of is we're seeing from like what it's supposed to be, in the sense where he's joining the Time Cop Authority and trying to figure out, like, solve time things, and that could be like like episodic. it could be predictive, but it could be episodic. But the Falcon Winter Soldier thing, that looks like it's going to be a situation again like WandaVision, where it's going to be one whole movie with cuts, and we'll see what that it looks like. But I hope we get to a point where we get the full season at once, because I did not enjoy that time-gated content.
Yeah,
Time-gated enjoyment. Didn't enjoy it.
It was not great, but
No.
the show actually, for me, or let's find out. Let's rate it. Let's
Yep.
see where you stand.
I'm at a 7 with this show.
Way lower than I thought you would say. But yeah, I'm at a 9. I thought this was a really well told story. I'm choosing to ignore all this stuff, that the bells and whistles that came with it, and I thought that they made me like 2 characters that I thought I would never care about. They gave me some genuinely funny moments, some genuinely like cool like fist pumping moments, and I thought like they did horror really well, which is something that Marvel property hasn't been able to commit to yet.
And hopefully where the seeds are sown for Multiverse of Madness actually being very, very horror driven, and being Sam Raimi directed, and even having that Sam Raimi Easter egg in the movie theater.
I'm starting to understand your 7 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about this. How it plants out. As I said, this could take 6 years. It could take one project. So I'm not too concerned with that. What I'm concerned with is what I got and what is happening in the moment. So I thought I did a good job of that. And so especially if I do a rewatch altogether, I feel like it might go up. The only thing I would knock a point off for was, like you made a point of like, there's a missing person, and if I'm wrong about who Evan Peters was playing, then I'm like, what was that? Like, what's the deal with that?
You feel duped.
There was a couple of like hanging threads where I'm just like, that's weird.
Loose ends of like, wait, how does his powers go? Like, does that mean that Agatha could give people powers temporarily? You have all those stories. Like, for me, the reason why it's a lot lower than a lot of people would have suspected is because I loved the show from all the character development stuff, learning more about Wanda, Vision, that heartbreak. Oh my God, so much of that was so successful. The parts I didn't care about were cool. We recreated these eras of television. I didn't care for those eras of television at all. Like Dick Van Dyke didn't care about. Like, what were the other ones that they did? I didn't care about anything until we got to the Modern Family era of television, as well as Malcolm in the Middle. I didn't care for any of those things. So to me, it just didn't connect. It didn't have that issue. It was more like, how did they do it? Oh, cool. Let's watch a behind the scenes YouTube footage of like, here's the color schemes of like how you do black and white. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting to me. But I'm like, that's an era of television that I never personally consumed a lot of or cared about. So it was like me. The reason why it's a 7 was because I'm like, that really added on to the whole, like, come on, let's get to the next episode. Like, I really want to just get more information so I don't feel duped. Like that was what killed it to me, was like that. It was such a slow start for me. And then the moment it started getting good, it was really, really good. But then it got so derailed from what it actually is. You're right. I would have actually liked to prefer to review the content itself, but I got more sidetracked by, this means this person or this, that whole thing. So that really knocked it down to 7 for me. I still loved it. Would definitely rewatch it, but only in the context of Ben's doing a crazy Marvel watch through now because we're getting the conclusion to the Multiverse of Madness. So he's watching from WandaVision all the way up until Doctor Strange for that saga. Like, that's where the context I would rewatch it. By itself, don't think I would.
Fair enough.
And that's why it's a 7. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening to our extra long episode about WandaVision. If you like this, then you're in luck. We are part of a great podcast network called the That Shelf Podcast Network. There's other great podcasts such as Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmare, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So please rate, No, don't rate review just yet. Just go there and see what else is going on at that shelf. If you want older episodes of our podcast, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. And we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. There's a bunch. So please go there. Then you can rate, review, and subscribe. And please share with your friends. All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.